By the 1990s, the zombies' popularity was on the decline. What used to be a frightening movie monster was now late-night TV fodder. Then in 1996, Capcom released Resident Evil, a game that popularized survival horror and renewed people's interest in zombies. Fast forward a few years to the mid-2000s, where films such as 28 Days Later and the Dawn of the Dead remake usher in a zombie renaissance. It was also around this time that Microsoft released the Xbox 360. With new hardware came new opportunities. Developers could create bigger and better games not possible on 6th generation hardware. In Capcom's case, they decided to launch a new IP called Dead Rising. Where Resident Evil emphasized survival, Dead Rising emphasized action. Dead Rising used the MT Framework engine, which let the developers put upwards of 800 zombies on screen at any time. Dead Rising released in August 2006 to great reviews, with critics praising the game for its zombie-killing action and unique gameplay. Sales-wise, the game sold 1 million copies by the end of 2006. When I turned 17, I celebrated the occasion by purchasing a lot of M-rated games. 2 of the games I bought were Dead Rising 2 and its spin-off, Off the Record. A few months later, I bought the original and its Wii version at a local GameStop. While I like Dead Rising 2, I love Dead Rising. In revisiting the original all these years later, I was curious to see if it was good as I remembered, or if it was blind nostalgia.
Say, buddy, you mentioned something about research for a story.
That's right. Got a tip that something big's happening.
In a nowhere little town like that? They sure didn't mention anything about it on TV.
Yeah, well, I'm freelance, pal. I don't make my living waiting for the TV to tell me what to cover.
Frank West is a freelance photojournalist who gets a tip of something going on in the sleepy town of Willamette, Colorado. He charters a helicopter to get into town, and while taking pictures, he notices a large group gathered outside the mall. Frank asks the pilot to land on the rooftop, only for military helicopters to show up. Frank makes a last-ditch jump onto the roof and heads towards the lobby. He discovers the large group outside is zombies, and when an old lady accidentally lets the dead in, Frank bolts for the security room, where he's greeted by 2 DHS agents. Frank has 3 days to uncover what's going on, but it won't be easy with all the zombies milling about.
Well, we're up to our necks in zombies. Yeah, I think I appreciate the situation just fine.
Dead Rising's premise is shades of Dawn of the Dead, but what makes the game distinct is its characters, tone, and writing. Frank West is the game's protagonist and a man who's covered wars, you know.
I've covered wars, you know.
He's a freelance journalist looking for a career-changing story, and what he finds gets him into deeper waters than expected. What I like most about Frank is his art. At the beginning, he's self-centered. He's a seasoned journalist who gets his story by any means necessary. He could care less about anyone because to him, they're just sources.
You're one hell of a journalist, aren't you, Frank? A hot-headed, underhanded, hotshot paparazzi with nothing better to do than to invade people's privacy.
I try. You got a point?
As the story progresses, he starts showing empathy when he learns more about why the outbreak happened. He becomes less focused on getting the scoop and more about getting out alive so he can go to the press with his story. What surprised me most in revisiting Dead Rising was the villain. Carlito Keys is the game's antagonist and the man responsible for turning 53,594 people into zombies. He does this in retaliation against Dr. Barnaby and the US government. Several years ago, Barnaby was conducting experiments to try and find a way to mass-produce cattle. Instead, he discovered a wasp that zombifies humans. The wasp escaped, wreaked havoc throughout Santa Cabeza, and Carlito lost his parents, leaving only him and his sister Isabella. As a teenager, I only saw Carlito as the bad guy. As an adult, I see him as less an antagonist and more a tragic character. His motivations aren't driven by world domination, but by vengeance and loss. Ditto for Isabella, who was only helping Carlito with his research. No discussion about Dead Rising's cast would be complete without mentioning the psychopaths. These are people who have been mentally broken by the outbreak. Some are evil, some are goofy, others are tragic. Though mostly optional, the psychopaths are the highlight of the game. It's not every day you find an unhinged mall clown or a grocery clerk a bit too obsessed with his job.
Clean up! Register 6!
The Psychopaths remind me of another Capcom franchise, Mega Man. Like the Robot Masters, the Psychopaths are individuals with distinct personalities. They're hard, but defeating them rewards Frank with experience and new weapons that'll make future encounters easier. Dead Rising walks a fine line between serious and silly. The game plays it straight, with the humor coming out of the situations. When you're not uncovering a conspiracy, you're killing scores of zombies with various items, dressing them in surfbot masks, or dressing Frank in silly outfits. The humor adds levity to the drama and highlights the game's creative action. This being a zombie game set in the mall, comparisons will be made to Dawn of the Dead. Like the George Romero classic, the game satirizes consumerism, with hordes of mindless zombies standing in for the mindless hordes of shoppers you see at a mall or department store. However, Dead Rising throws plenty of jabs not only at consumerism, but the meat industry as well. Humans crave meat like a zombie craves flesh, and even if we've had enough, we've never had enough. Dead Rising's premise may be steeped in zombie film tropes, but its plot isn't. Without spoiling anything, the game sets up plot points that leave the door open for a sequel or two. Whether or not you see these story threads depends on the decisions you make. Dead Rising is an action sandbox time management game. Over the course of 3 days, Frank will uncover the story, save survivors, and kill a shitload of zombies using anything and everything. On the surface, Dead Rising is a fun zombie killing time, but dig deeper, and it turns out to be one of the most challenging and rewarding games you'll ever play. When the game begins, Frank is a weakling. He moves at a snail's pace, has limited health and inventory, and the first boss fight happens a little over 30 minutes into the game. Dead Rising does not fool around. If you're expecting to jump in and start killing zombies en masse, think again. Dead Rising's difficulty curve is steep. It requires patience and lots of it. Not only that, several of its design decisions will make it or break it for first-time players, like the fact everything is timed, or the weird save system where you need to rest or use the bathroom to save your progress.
Hold your horses, babe. I'm the one asking the questions here.
The more time you spend playing Dead Rising, the better you get. You become more familiar with the mall's layout, where important items are, and the best routes to take. It's satisfying when you climb over the curve and embrace the game for what it is, a fast and frank experience. To protect himself against the undead, Frank can use just about anything that isn't bolted down. Lead pipes, katanas, chainsaws, soda cans, and mannequin body parts are one of many ways you can defend yourself. Items have durability, so they'll break after several swings, but by finding books, you can increase their durability. The same goes for healing items and PP. PP, or prestige points, is this game's experience. Frank earns PP by killing zombies, saving survivors, defeating psychopaths, taking pictures, or interacting with environmental objects. Earn enough, and he levels up, which unlocks a new skill or increases one of his stats. It's satisfying to watch Frank go from a weakling journalist to a badass zombie killer that can chuck zombies across the room or pummel them with a double lariat. In addition to using household items and your fist, there are guns. Guns pack a punch but have limited ammo. The shotgun is great for crowd control, and by tapping the fire button when you have the SMG, Frank turns into a sentry turret, gunning down zombies with pinpoint accuracy. When you're not killing zombies, you're taking pictures using Frank's camera. The better the picture, the more PP you'll earn. Depending on the type of shot you take, your photo will be great in different categories like no genre, horror, and erotica.
Fantastic!
One of Dead Rising's features is its time limit. The clock is always ticking in Willamette, and as the days progress, Oz the janitor updates Frank on new missions. These could be cases or optional side quests called scoops. Missions are colored either blue, yellow, or red to reflect how much time is left. Blue means you have plenty of time, yellow means you have a limited amount, and red means you better haul ass or it's gone for good. It's important to prioritize the cases because these are the story missions. Miss them and you miss the rest of the story. The time limit is a love it or hate it mechanic. Some love it because it adds urgency, while others hate it because they think it's too constricting. Compared to the sequels, Dead Rising's timer is very strict. You have a limited window of opportunity to complete most missions, so you'll find yourself deciding which ones to do and which ones to avoid. There were plenty of close calls where I made it to the next case or survivor with little time to spare. This was especially the case when I made it back to the safe house with a survivor posse and immediately jumped into the next case with little time remaining. Besides the zombies, there are psychopaths and human enemies. Psychopaths are the game's boss fights. Defeating them rewards you with experience plus a unique weapon or a survivor. Initially, these fights are challenging, but after leveling up Frank, they become a cakewalk, especially if you find the infamous main chainsaw. This is a weapon you get when you defeat Adam the Clown. If you find 3 magazines that increase its durability, this weapon becomes the BFG 9000, capable of turning zombies and psychopaths into Swiss cheese. Besides the psychopaths, there are human enemies in the form of cultists and soldiers. The cultists show up on the second day and are cannon fodder. You need to be careful because they can blind Frank and capture him, stripping him of his inventory. The soldiers show up at the tail end of the game and are the main enemy in overtime mode. They wield assault rifles that can stunlock Frank and have drones that blare an alarm if he's spotted. The soldiers aren't hard, just annoying. They soak up a lot of damage and make navigating the mall a hassle to do.
Sounds plausible. Or it could be some serious bullshit.
As great as Dead Rising's gameplay is, there are issues. The shooting is clunky. Aiming guns is done by holding the right trigger and pressing the fire button. Frank can't move when shooting, which is odd because he can move when he uses his camera. You can't skip through text, which only pads out the mission because you're trying to get a move on, but must sit through multiple text boxes until the survivor is ready to go. Also, the original Xbox 360 version is infamous because it only has one save file. Later re-releases added multiple save slots, but the 360 version only has one. If you save in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're screwed.
I'll just get my information somewhere else, thank you very much.
Finally, the survivors. The survivors suck. At first, they don't seem bad, but it isn't long until you realize how much babysitting these guys need. They'll stop dead in their tracks, try flying zombies, and get hung up on the environment. Whatever you do, don't give them weapons because then they'll go off and try to kill every zombie in sight. You can direct them to a location, which is helpful, but it doesn't hide how dumb they are. On the flip side, you're in a lot of PP for saving survivors, plus certain ones offer bonuses like shortcuts or weapons. Dead Rising is no slouch in its replay value. If you feel the game is kicking your ass, you can start from the beginning with the currently leveled Frank West. There are also multiple endings, with the best one, ending A, unlocking the game's overtime mode. In it, Frank has 24 hours to escape the mall after his ride gets killed. Beat that, and you unlock Infinity Mode. Infinity Mode lets you freely explore the mall, but Frank's health is dwindling and needs to be replenished regularly. Plus, psychopaths and hostile survivors randomly spawn across the map. Infinity is a fun little time killer, but a terrible waste of time. You need to play this mode for 14 hours straight if you want to unlock the Z-Saber and Arthur's Boxers. I'll pass. Speaking of rewards, you can unlock various costumes as well as the Mega Buster if you kill 53,594 zombies.
Have you seen my baby? I can't live without my precious little sweetie doggy. Oh, where is my Madonna? Where is she? Oh.
Dead Rising came out in 2006, barely a year into the 360's life cycle. While some of the character models look a little rough, the graphics are still impressive. The mall is large, with various stores and landmarks that help each section stand out and serve as visual reminders for where you are in the mall. It's also a great showcase of what the then new Xbox 360 was capable of. Previous zombie games pitted you against 5 or 6 ghouls at a time. Dead Rising sees you chopping and slicing your way through hundreds of them. Dead Rising scale not only leaves you with that wow feeling, but also the holy shit I'm surrounded by zombies feeling. There's also a lot of tiny little details you might not notice, like how throwing pies at zombies sticks to their face instead of bouncing off, or how there's actual reflection in the sunglasses. This game is a time capsule of mid-2000s culture, a time when HD TVs started entering the fray and when Britney Spears-like pop stars ruled the charts. The audio is excellent. The echoing moans of the undead combined with the mall music adds to the atmosphere, and the sound effects make killing zombies that extra bit satisfying. The voice performances are on the campy side, but they're enjoyable, as is the boss music, which slaps harder than Frank slapping zombies with a frying pan.
Fantastic!
Dead Rising is a case example of how to do a next-gen game. It does something new and exciting while showing what the technology is capable of. The story and characters are delightful, and the gameplay is brilliant. It's a game that pushes you to be creative in your killing, but to also be quick and efficient. Time is Dead Rising's real enemy. Goofing off too much has consequences, so you always need to be mindful of the time or else it will bite you when you least expect it. What I love most about Dead Rising is its replay value. No two playthroughs are the same because there's always something new to find, and with a higher level Frank, what was once an obstacle is now an inconvenience. Dead Rising isn't perfect. The save system is archaic, the shooting is clunky, and the survivors are more brain dead than the undead. But you can forgive these outdated mechanics because the game itself is so unique and cool. The original Dead Rising is one of my favorite games of all time. It's a lightning in a ball concoction of zombie slaying, exploration, time management, and Frank West. Dead Rising gets a 9 out of 10.